Now, if you'll forgive me, I'll go inside, pack my little bags, and return to Vienna where I belong. And somewhere out there is a young lady who I think will never be a nun.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where this week we are concluding our exploration of Robert Wise's The Sound of Music. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha, writer, producer, host, and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California. And ready to get into the end and more uncomfortable sections of this movie for sure, and maybe even compare it to some of the historical truths, which I'm sure you have there, Steve, as well. So looking forward to this conversation as we wrap up this visit into one of the greatest films ever made.
Things are inevitably going to get darker before that eventual dawn. That is definitely true. And before we get into that, we should say that the best way to support the Cine-Files is at patreon.com/the Cine-Files, where you can listen to ad-free versions of the show, our shorts. We're going to combine, for instance, this big Sound of Music 3-part episode will become one episode, and you can listen to that as one of our tiers. You can join our advisory board, you can ask questions, and you can also support the show through Apple Podcasts. If you're an Apple person, it's literally one click, and that will also give you ad-free versions of the show and our Cine-Files shorts. And we just recorded one that will be out by the time this comes out on Beatles 64, the documentary that is on Disney Plus, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we do appreciate everyone who's supporting the show. And, we know times are tough. We know times can be a bit that belts are being tightened a little bit, but we appreciate even more anybody who comes along and becomes a patron of the show or supports us in any way. And another way you can support us and maybe even kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, is if you hear some of our sponsors, some of the products that they're promoting, that they create or they make, and you like it, then please remember to use our code. We usually do record most of the commercials for our shows so that you can hear us encouraging you and supporting the products to sign up or get these products and to use our code. So if you hear anything that you want to try out, please remember to use our code so that these sponsors keep coming back to support us as we continue doing the show.
So, John, we've had an intermission. We've got to go to the lobby. Maybe we visited the restroom.
Yes.
Maybe we got another beverage. We refilled our popcorn. We've returned to the movie theater. We've sat down in our seat. The lights have come up, and we've returned to the beautiful Von Trapp Villa, a beautiful scenery where there is a lovely game of ball going on between the Baroness and the kids.
Now, I went and picked up some Edelweiss, so that's what I brought back into the theater. But yes, we are here to watch a Baroness play a very cold game of ball with the kids, as Max looks on there from the balcony.
And if you were curious, I think, of how horribly these children treated the governesses that they didn't like before Maria came out, I think you get a good glimpse. This is not a fun game. They're not being nice to her. And it's so funny because she knows what's going on. And she knows she has to be a good sport and is trying her best to fake this whole thing. And it's just awkward and horrible to watch.
So I think the Baroness gets a bit of a bad rap with some people who review the film or talk about this film, because she has been trying to convince the captain that they should be together. She marries him. And yes, she doesn't trick Maria out of the situation. Maybe she manipulates.
She manipulates her, clearly.
She manipulates her, encourages, she doesn't stop her from leaving. But, again, because she wants to be with this man and all's fair in love and war. And so she did what she did. But then she's also trying to make the kids like her and trying to make them feel comfortable around her. So she's doing a lot of work here to try to get herself connected with the Von Trapp family, and they're not having anything to do with her, really, and she's not getting any satisfaction out of all of this. So I think she's a little bit unfairly judged by some of the fans of this film.
So everything you say is absolutely, completely true. I agree with all of it. I will add to
You're
it,
setting me up. I
however.
can feel it.
Well, what I was so is it what's interesting is like trying to think about this, like, well, what were the relationships between the wealthy aristocracy and their children?
Eh?
And kids were sent off to boarding school. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were raised by wet nurses and governesses.
Sure,
And
sure.
the idea that mom and dad would get down and play ball regularly and have fun, silly time with a group of kids, that wasn't necessarily a thing that was always happening, you know?
Probably unheard of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm sure I mentioned this on the show before, but there's this theory that essentially childhood was invented in the 20th century. Because previous to the 20th century, for most people,
Yeah.
if you were 3 years old, you were still helping gathering the eggs from the chickens in the farm.
That's a
Like
good
you
point.
started working, and maybe you had 2 or 3 years of schooling, maybe in
Yeah.
a one-room schoolhouse. But then the reason you had summer vacations was because you had to go work on the farm. Like, and were kids working in factories in the late 1800s and early 20th century? Yeah, they were. They had
They were.
full-time fucking jobs. This idea that there's this magical period between 1 years old and 18 years old where you're supposed to be a child, and that's all about that's recent. That's not that does not go back to the beginning of time.
Yeah, that's right, kids.
Yeah.
So,
Suck
you
it
know,
up.
Suck it up. And give me 20. For God's
But I do love, and one other thing we should keep in mind, and just remember this. I know I brought it up when there's the big confrontation scene between Maria and Georg.
Yeah.
But anytime you are looking at that lake, and in the same scene, seeing the villa, those are at 2 different locations.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they were never shot at the same day. And what usually it's not like you went and shot part 1 of the lake, went
Right.
over to the villa, shot the other part of that scene, go back to the lake, shoot part 1 of a different scene, go back to the villa. You don't. You shot all the lake stuff out. So you shot half of 12 scenes, and then you went to the villa and shot the other half of those 12 scenes. And that's happening right here because Max is watching her from the villa.
Right. That makes sense.
So I love the sort of, they say we're tired of doing this. And she, as nicely as she possibly can, which isn't all that nice, says,
Oh, whatever you want, dear. We'll do it again tomorrow.
the kids head off. She goes to see Max, who is, I think, enjoying her discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah. And she is. And look, I mean, like you said, they were threatening to throw the ball at her face. Like it was,
yeah.
And that's not a small ball. That's
No.
a heavy ball with a rough exterior that would have really done some damage.
Well, and I think from her reaction to it, I think she's already been hit in the face.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good point. Right.
You know?
She's a little gun shy or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great point. So, yeah, I mean, so for all the sweetness, people will fall in love and with Maria and the kids, like these kids are still terrors. you
Yeah,
know?
don't cross these kids.
Yeah, exactly.
I get a fiendish delight thinking of you as the mother of 7. How do you plan to do it?
Darling, haven't you ever heard of a delightful little thing called boarding school?
And he describes her as Baroness Machiavelli.
It's so unfair. They're clearly terrible kids at times with these governesses. So yes, they deserve to go to boarding school. This isn't a thing where they're all nice kids and they're being sent away by this evil stepmother. No, it's that they're hellions, and she's going to deal with it by sending them off to boarding school because they clearly can't deal with being parented.
I will tell you of a current parental theory that I believe has some truth to it, but I don't like, and I disagree with most of it, which is that a child is acting out.
Yeah.
The reason the child is acting out is because they are not getting something they need. And so what we have to do, rather than punish them for bad behavior, is we have to figure out what they need and give them what they need, and then they will no longer act out. I think it is absolutely true sometimes that the kid needs a hug or feels disconnected or scared, and therefore that emotion is leading them to act out another way.
Sure.
And I think so we could say, in this case, the kids need Maria. They felt loved and cared for the first time since their mother died. And they are now acting out because the thing that made them feel safe and comfortable has been taken away. And I think that is totally true in this situation. I also think that there are times where kids need to be punished for their bad behavior because that's the way to stop them from doing it. And continuing to go like, oh, you must need something else makes for sometimes some very spoiled kids.
Yes. Agreed.
That is, yeah.
I'll agree with you on that end. As someone who does not have kids, and I speak very knowledgeably about this, I agree with you.
Good. Well, I mean, as long as I have your expert opinion, I feel safe in my parenting choices.
That's right.
Then.
Damn right.
What's the matter with all you gloomy pussies?
Nothing.
I know what we'll do. Let's have a rehearsal.
What for?
Let's make believe we're standing on the stage at the festival.
Because Max is still working this angle
Yeah.
of wanting to get these kids at the festival. And the kids don't feel like singing because they don't have Fraulein Maria, and Max insists, and Liesel gets the guitar, and we get them all lined up. They're in their places.
All of you sing something, try something you know, enjoy it, be cheerful. All right, Liesel.
What do you feel about this rendition of The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music?
It's how can I say, it's sad and slightly lifeless.
It is the most depressing
Yeah.
version of this song you could possibly. I'm sure it's in a minor key, and I do whatever they did with the tempo, but it is just like it's like a dirge.
Yeah, and what I mean by lifeless is not that it's like has no sentiment to it. Rather, it's that there's no joy or energy or life to it, right? Because they're clearly missing Maria, and that's coming through in the song.
Yeah. One other thing to know is it's pouring rain when they're filming this scene, which it was constantly. And there's this level of rain where if it's light enough, you can't see the drops depending on the lens and the lighting in the camera.
Right.
And so it's not that it ever stopped raining. They're just waiting for it to get slightly lighter rain so they could shoot the scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Georg comes out and listens, and you contrast this with him hearing them sing before, and that it was the most moving, powerful, amazing thing, life-changing moment for him.
Yeah.
And now he knows.
Oh yeah.
And they just sing, and Brigitte just walks away, and the kids just kind of stop.
They just wanted to sing for me, bless their hearts. That's lovely, lovely, don't stop.
Again, this is this parenting thing you do. He's trying to fake it for them.
Father,
Yes, Brigitte.
is it true Fräulein Maria isn't coming back?
Brigitte, she's really the character. She's, as Maria says, the most observant, the most intelligent. I think her performance totally stands out.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned that Brigitte is played by Angela Cartwright, and who ended up after this. She played Linda Williams, who was the stepdaughter of Danny Thomas Danny Williams, rather, played by Danny Thomas in the Danny Thomas Show, which is so confusing. It's the Danny Thomas Show, but he's playing a guy named Danny Williams. I mean, what are you doing to my brain? But she was also Penny Robinson, right, in the 60s series Lost in Space. And her older sister is Veronica Cartwright, who we saw in Alien screaming as the alien is coming out of John Hurt's body. And she was recently in a great series called Man on the Inside. She is one of the actresses in the Ted Danson series that I highly recommend everybody watch. She made a cameo in the Lost in Space film as reporter number 2. And she even appeared in the second season of the Netflix show Lost in Space series that they did there. So, yeah, clearly a big deal in her life, Lost in Space and Sound of Music.
You know, there's shows from your youth that you revisit them as a grown-up and you go, man, this show was really good. I have a feeling I should never revisit Lost in Space. I loved it as a kid.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would hold up well for me as an adult. So now the kids are sad and they're asking about Fraulein Maria.
Yeah.
And now dad is going to do a dad move that I've done so many times and it never works, which is, they're upset about a thing. And so you pretend that it's totally not upsetting. Everything's okay, hoping that the joyfulness of your fake behavior is going to lift everybody's spirits and they'll just sign on to not being upset. Never works.
Oh, Fraulein Maria. Didn't I tell you what her note said? She said she missed her life at the Abbey too much. She had to leave us. And that's all there is to it.
And he gives them a big smile. And then they ask the big question.
Father,
Hmm?
who is our new governess going to be?
And he stands behind the Baroness and kind of puts his arms around her and says,
You're not going to have a governess anymore.
We're not.
No. You're going to have a new mother.
that goes over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, it does. And then we get a Godfather sequence, which is so interesting, where they all walk up and essentially kiss the ring to her like they do with Michael at the end of The Godfather. It's fascinating.
But unlike The Godfather, where they're really signing on with this person,
right?
Everybody there knows that they are not happy, and this is all just going through these horrible, uncomfortable motions, And we cut to them out in the streets of Salzburg, Heading up to the Abbey, they ring the bell, and one of the nuns answer, and they ask for Fraulein Maria.
We have to see her. Will you tell her we're here, please?
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Oh, but you've got to. We have to speak to her. She's our governess. We want her back.
She didn't even say goodbye.
It's very important.
All we want to do is talk to her.
I'm very sorry, children, but Maria is in seclusion. She hasn't been seeing anyone.
Yeah.
And they insist that they'll see her. And I love Gretel, which I didn't mention before, but she keeps holding up her fingers like, I want to show her my finger. Super cute.
Yeah.
And they just escort the kids very nicely, but those kids are not getting to see Maria, and they escort them out of the Abbey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has she spoken yet? Has she told you anything?
She doesn't say a word, Reverend Mother, except in prayer.
Poor child.
And I love the Reverend Mother. I think she's a rock star, beginning to end, so much deep wisdom. And here's another one where she says,
Perhaps I have been wrong in leaving her alone so long. I think you'd better bring her to me, even if she's not yet ready.
Yes, Reverend Mother.
yeah. So she's going to go right at the problem. And that's what good leaders have to do at some point. I find it interesting that they open the scene in the Reverend Mother's office with a novice who's obviously just joining the Abbey. You know, you picture this is Maria a few years earlier. And they take her away, and in comes Maria crying already as she grabs the Reverend Mother's hands.
Tell me what happened.
I was frightened.
Frightened? Were they unkind to you?
Oh, no. No, I was confused. I felt... I've never felt that way before.
And I think she was frightened, but what she was frightened of was her emotions.
Yes. Yes. Her feelings for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay. I knew that here I'd be away from it. I'd be safe.
You would think that their response would be, of course you'll be safe. This is the Abbey. We are God's children. We protect you here. That's not what she says. She says,
Maria, our Abbey is not to be used as an escape. What is it you can't face?
I can't face him again.
I think, and she sends Sister Margarita away. I think in this moment, she's already figured it out. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
That's how perceptive a person I think she is.
You mean the Reverend Mother, or do you mean?
Yeah, Reverend Mother. Yeah.
That's why she sends Margarita away.
And then it just all pours out.
Are you in love with him?
I don't know. I don't know. The Baroness said I was. She said that he was in love with me, but I didn't want to believe it. Oh, there were times when we would look at each other. Oh, Mother, I could hardly breathe.
And your mind immediately goes back to that dance that they shared.
100%.
The moment after Edelweiss, the moment, like even when they were fighting,
Yeah.
there was an intense connection.
Did you let him see how you felt?
If I did, I didn't know it. That's what's been torturing me. I was there on God's errand. To have asked for his love would have been wrong.
What do you think about that? I was there on God's errand, and to ask for his love would have been wrong.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who is Catholic, and of course there was, or was Catholic, well, I guess I would say, but like being involved in the religion, there is always this kind of thing about if you're doing something for God, it has to be devoid of all these other things. This your carnal impulses or your desires or your need for satisfaction on your side, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't meet someone and fall in love and service and then eventually whatever. But like if you are there for a certain goal, if you give in to feelings or give in to pulses that'll delay you or distract you from your goal, then in essence, you're insulting the mission you were sent there to do, and you're insulting God by connection. And so that's kind of the mentality there. And I think Julia plays this, or Julie Andrews, I thought Julie plays this so well. Like just, this could have been so cheesy, so over the top. But she has an ability to play these very big emotions in ways that are absolutely believable. And you as an audience member are desperately attached to the emotions that she is experiencing in these moments in the movie. And certainly the way she's talking to the Reverend Mother, she's basically making it very clear that the love that she had for him overwhelmed her, and it conflicted with the love that she has for God. And so she ran away because she wanted to be in a safe place and wasn't ready to confront it. Just like she wasn't ready to confront her stuff earlier in the movie, her being late, her all these things. She's rebellious about this stuff, but she's not ready to confront the reasons why. And I think here in this situation, the Reverend Mother's like, look, the other stuff we can deal with. This you got to confront. This you got to get clear on, because this could really mess you up. And so I love that this scene works so well, where once again it's Reverend Mother who is having to help her see the light.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know if I can quite articulate this the
Mm.
right way, is that generally when you're creating a character, there needs to be a certain kind of consistency. They have to make sense, as a character. Like they can be very different and have lots of different elements. Maria is a character we are introduced to her as someone who is flighty and doesn't think ahead and is just drawn to do things by instinct and has all of these very positive emotions, but a lot of emotions that are sort of driving her interests and joy and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with her. Then she makes this decision to be confident, and she 100% knows exactly what she's doing when she's with those kids, to the point where she can stand up to the most powerful character in the movie totally fearlessly because she is 100% certain that she's right.
Right.
And those seem like do those two things quite fit together? The wild person that we meet at the beginning and this confident person? I don't know. And then you get to this third person who, when confronted with this thing that she's not prepared for,
Yeah.
totally freaks out, total
Yep.
panic, and falls completely apart. And it's like what I think is the brilliance of the movie and the brilliance of Julie Andrews is that she can make all those things sit together and totally feel like a consistent character that makes perfect sense. And we're going to see her transform into another character. I would say there are two more elements that come into her personality in this second act of the film. But at this moment, she's like, sign me up. I'm ready to take my vows and just be a full nun. That's it. And Reverend Mother's having none of it.
The love of a man and a woman is holy too. You have a great capacity to love. What you must find out is how God wants you to spend your love.
Now, I'm not a religious person, as you know, but I still think there's tremendous wisdom here of like, you need to figure out who you are and what you want and what you need and what your place is, how you make your place in the world.
Yeah. This is what can separate, religion from cults, right? People always get into try to claim religions or cults, and you can certainly make a case in certain ways, but like
Sometimes.
sure. But the people who really understand the purpose of religion and the promise of religion make it very clear that you have to choose this with a clear mind, because to do this fully correctly, you will need to be clear about the reasons why. And especially if you're not born into it, right? And so she watched these nuns and watched them from the trees and fell in love with the idea of the fantasy of what she thought this was. The Reverend Mother knows what this is, having been decades in this serving God situation. And so she says to Maria, very, as you said, with wisdom, she's a wise character, makes it very clear. Like, you need to be clear that this is what you want. I don't want you joining it as an escape. I don't want you joining it as a reaction. I don't want you joining it because you can't confront these things. No, if you're going to be part of our order, because it will demand a lot of you, you need to be very clear about why you're joining. And this is the thing about rebels. Rebels are very clear about why they're rebelling. The second you convince them to be part of your movement, they can be just as fervent in defending and being part of your movement or your religion or your organization. So you want to make sure that they're clear about the reasons why they're choosing what they're choosing, so they can give all of themselves to it. Most rebels are rebelling because they're afraid to believe in something or invest in something because they see the flaws in it, and so they need to push back on it. But once they erase or deal with the flaws or come to terms with those flaws, they can be quite fervent members of whatever the organization they take a part of.
I think you're totally right. And I think the thing with Maria, and maybe this answers what I was bringing up before about the contradictions within her personality. When she knows what she's supposed to do, she is supremely confident.
100%. Yes.
And it's just these moments where she doesn't know that she really is flailing.
Yep.
And Reverend Mother says, you got to go back. You got to go find out. You got to face this.
Oh, Mother, you can't ask me to do that. Please let me stay. I beg of you.
Maria, these walls were not built to shut out problems. You have to face them. You have to live the life you were born to live.
It's a great companion scene to the scene where she sends her to,
Totally.
right? Because she wanted to stay in the order and serve God, but Reverend Mother knew better, that she needed to go out there and kind of explore the world to see where she belonged. Her running back, the same thing. Reverend Mother says to her, no, you got to go back because you got to confront where you belong. You got to figure this out,
You know how occasionally there's supporting characters in the movie where you go like, I'd like to know their story. The story of the Reverend Mother
Please.
from before she joined the Abbey, all the way to becoming Reverend Mother in this moment, to her death,
Yeah.
I think would be a great movie
Give
or
me
a great
that
TV
prequel
show.
series. Give me that prequel series. Come on.
Totally. And she turns away and she actually starts this song with her back to the audience, which is totally crazy. And as I'm watching this song, I keep taking notes on just how totally simple and elegant this whole scene is. First of all, they really got a great voice to dub her because I would never have known. It just has that same timbre, that same richness, the same, wisdom and age in it.
Yep.
And we're just a single on her with a back to us, and we go into Climb Every Mountain.
Climb every mountain, search high and low, follow every byway, every path you know.
You can't start a character with their back to you unless you feel confident that you have done enough to create a connection with the audience with that character. So the audience goes along with the character when their back is turned. They want to know more. Yeah.
And you think about like when people talk about, okay, we're going to take a stage production and we're going to bring it into a movie. We talk about opening it up. We got to give it some scale. And like, if you think of like the difference between the version of America in Robert Wise's West Side Story, which is all on a rooftop, which is fantastic and amazing and awesome. And then the version of America in Steven Spielberg's version, that's more opened up. Spielberg opens it up. It's all coming down the street. It's more characters. It's more stuff. It's just a big thing. This is the opposite. We're in a room. We got a single on her back. Then she turns towards Maria and we're just in a simple 2-shot. The lighting and the shadows that we're playing with are just gorgeous.
Well,
and I don't mean to make this a leading question, but did you have an emotional reaction to this song?
How can I say that?
And have you watched it more than once? That's my
Yes.
follow-up.
I rewatched it immediately after she sang it. I don't know if emotional was the right reaction. It was more a matter of an appreciation. Like, I thought it was a perfectly timed song for the moment. And I thought this actress delivered it so well and believably and so movingly. And so for me, it was more a matter of appreciation, and so I that's the reaction I had when I was watching it. And of course the lyrics can be quite poignant, especially if you're a person who has to kind of confront these mountains and climb over these mountains, whether they're self-induced or induced by the world. And so, I found that to be a really enriching experience watching the movie.
This to me is a weird way I say this, but this to me is such a Rocky song as in the boxer Rocky, because this song is about getting up.
Yeah.
This song is about, you want to follow your dream. You're going to have to keep giving and giving, and it doesn't matter. You have to keep going and fighting through the whole thing.
And also the way it's shot, Steve, is very holy. Like you see the lights coming through the window. It's almost like she's, imparting this kind of God wisdom to her.
Yep.
From a place of love.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that we're enclosed in this office, in this dark sort of room as part of this building, that's this old stone edifice, you feel it all here, and like, you could have staged this on a mountaintop. You could have staged this in some huge way.
Yeah.
But
out in the center
power.
area of the Abbey. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I just love, like, the lighting kind of forms a triangle with Maria in the center of the triangle, and then she comes forward, so she's behind the Reverend Mother, still in the light, and then there's the single of Maria, and she's just absolutely, totally moved by what she is hearing, and then the single on the Reverend Mother, finally in the light as she hits those incredible high notes at the end of the song.
Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find
And as I said, so I was commenting as I was just watching and typing my notes, is that I was writing, God, it's so simple. It's just perfectly simple the way it was staged. And then I listened to Robert Wise's commentary. And this is what he said. He said when he went to see the stage show, the Reverend Mother comes down stage center and just belts the song straight to the audience. And he absolutely loved the song, but he felt that staging and making it big and ruined the song. And so his whole goal was to make it subtle, to make it simple, and to never have her belting straight into the camera. And I was like, oh, and it's so funny, like he succeeded because that literally is what I was typing about, was what his intention was in making this song.
I think she's singing about her faith, as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not just the lessons that Maria has got to confront. I mean, near the end of that song, when she turns and she's looking out the window and Maria comes to her, that's all staging to make it very clear that she's in essence singing about her own experience and how the faith and how her faith in God got her over mountains and all of these things, because she was once young and scared and nervous. And so, these are the moments where wisdom can be quite important in young people's lives. I know young people love to make fun of old people. I did it too when I was young, and that's the game. That's always the circle of life. But when I get older, what you realize is that a lot of the wisdom that old people were trying to tell you when you were young, you realize was actually really wise. And those have been the hardest things to accept as you get older, and you wish you could go back. It's the terrible cliche. And I think what she's doing and by the way, she's not doing it to her face, right? There's a moment in the song where they're like across from each other and she's singing, I love the shadows on the wall. But when she turns and she's got Maria now, and Maria comes to her and she looks out the window, she's in essence, showing her like, this is the path that you need to walk to climb over these things, and you'll realize where you belong once you do.
That is a great point, because she's not just saying this is what you should do.
Yeah.
She's saying this is the pathway I'm walking.
Yes.
And I'm farther down this pathway than you, and I know stuff that you don't know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is funny. We were talking earlier about parenting and, whether or not how much you indulge a kid or don't indulge a kid. What Reverend Mother does here is perfect. She's never unkind.
No.
It is 100% completely kind and super gentle. And she says, you got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go do this. She doesn't give her any space.
Right.
She's like, this is what you have to do. Go do it,
And to Maria's credit, because we also have a good credit, she does it. Like, there's plenty of people you counsel. There's plenty of people who try to parent who don't. And so the fact that Maria deserves credit for twice now listening to the Reverend Mother and taking the chance to follow her advice.
So now we're back with Georg and his kids. They're all lined up. You can totally see this weird messing with his children, Christopher Plummer, sense of humor as he's caught them in these lies. He knows they're lying to him.
Yeah.
All right, now who's going to be the first one to tell me the truth? Friedrich? Brigitte? Liesel?
Where do you think we were, Father?
Liesel's playing an interesting game too, because she goes,
Well, if you don't believe us, you must have some idea where you think we were.
and let me ask, does Georg know that they went to try to find Maria?
Yeah, I think he does.
I think he does too.
Yeah.
And finally they say,
We were berry picking.
I forgot you were berry picking.
All over the place.
What kind of berries?
Blueberries, sir.
Blueberries.
Yes, of course.
It's too early for blueberries.
and then Friedrich, man, with the worst lie.
They were strawberries.
Strawberries?
It's been so cold lately, they turned blue.
And just the groan that goes across. It's like, dude, come on.
Yeah, eye rolls.
Since you've obviously stuffed yourselves full of thousands of delicious berries, you can't be hungry anymore, so I'll just have to simply tell Frau Schmidt to skip your dinner.
In a way, parenting his own way now with
Oh,
a
yeah.
little bit of knowledge. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because what would have happened if the kids lied to Georg before Maria had shown up, when we're still in the whistle times?
Oh, yeah.
He would have, I don't know that he would have physically, beat them,
Right.
but it would have been really, really scary if
Yes.
they had lied to their father under those circumstances. That's not what's happening now.
Well, look in the moment near the beginning of the film when is it Brigitte who's reading when she walks
Yeah.
in? Like she turns around and surrenders her butt to a quick spank from him with the book. So clearly that was possibly in play if you lied to him or didn't tell or got in trouble with him, so.
By the way, when Christopher Plummer was in Salzburg, he said it was very important to him to find some people who knew Georg, from back in the day and talk to them. And what he says is he spoke to several people and all of them described Georg as the most boring man they had ever met. Now, again, I don't know what I believe of what Christopher Plummer said, but that is what he said.
That's hilarious, but
When Fräulein Maria wanted to feel better, she used to sing that song, remember?
Yes.
Let's try it.
And Liesel starts and we go back into, it's not quite the dirge that their version of The Sound of Music is, but this version of their favorite things is not exactly that happy.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens.
it's longing
Yeah.
when you're hearing it. Yeah.
And they keep singing, and then you could see Brigitte, who's always the first to figure everything out, hears something, and then we hear something,
Right.
and then we cut to Maria in that beautiful blue dress, now singing a joyful and enthusiastic version of My Favorite Things as she runs up and embraces the kids.
I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
And I love that Liesel is so great. And it's a little moment, right? But Liesel she doesn't run first. She makes sure that all the younger kids run she encourages them to run first. And then Liesel comes in. And I love that because it's a little character moment, but it's a smart character moment that the older child would want to give this to the younger children first.
Yeah.
And so I love that.
They're very cute. Like Gretel again holds up the finger.
Yeah.
What happened to your finger?
It got caught.
Caught in what?
Friedrich's teeth.
Which is, we've had, it was the rule of, we have the 3 times set up to get before we got to here, and now we get the joke, and it's cute.
Liesel, you all right?
Just fair.
Many telegrams been delivered here lately? None at all, Fräulein. But I'm learning to accept it. I'll be glad when school begins.
And she gives Liesel the same advice that the Reverend Mother gave her.
Oh, Liesel, you can't use school to escape your problems. You have to face them.
Interesting.
Oh, I have so much to tell you all.
We have things to tell you, too.
I'm sure you do.
The most important thing is that Father's going to be married.
And man, Julie Andrews, the reaction to that is so great.
Right. Because she thought she was running back in to tell him how much she loves him and he was going to drop everything for her. And
Well, and the Reverend Mother said, well, you do have to go find out. And I think she went, I guess I just found out.
Married?
Yes, to Baroness Schrader.
Oh, I see.
Oh, Father, look!
Maria's come back from the Abbey.
And there we see Christopher Plummer standing up on those steps. Again, I'm going to say the same thing. If it's at the lake and you see him on the steps, this is shot on 2 different days. And my note here is, there's Christopher Plummer standing on the steps looking like a total stud.
yeah.
It's a very dramatic pose.
The question I have to ask you, though, is as a director, why is he framed to the right? Why isn't he standing in the center of the...
Well, that is a great question. I got to look at the shot then. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Uh,
It's a fascinating decision to make him to the right. It draws your eye to him. And maybe that's the point. I don't know.
So, John, I can tell you exactly why he's framed here. Have we discussed very much on the Cine-Files the rule of thirds?
Occasionally we have discussed this, yes.
So if you imagine, and this is really easy to do it, if you imagine bisecting the frame into a grid where there's a line at thirds of the way halfway down, which is the top line would be, you see the top of those pillars?
Yes, the bar
That
over there
creates a line.
Yeah.
And then the pillars actually each create one of those lines coming down as the thirds.
Uh-huh.
This is a perfect example of the rule of thirds, which is that is the dramatic place to put that person. If you put him dead center, you're not obeying the rule of thirds. And I did not, no one even taught me about the rule of thirds when I was in film school. I didn't learn about it until later. And then if you start just taking that grid and you go, man, that's a great shot, and you just put the grid on, you will see, oh, wow, rule of thirds.
Yeah, interesting.
When there's that moment where when Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans goes to meet John Ford at the end of the movie, played by David Lynch.
David Lynch, yeah.
And David Lynch goes, did you ever put the horizon here or you put the horizon here? That's it. Now get the fuck out, or whatever the moment is. That's what he's talking about, and so that is why he's standing in that very dramatic position.
Yeah.
And we're alone with them. And remember before, the kids said she didn't say goodbye. And he's like, yeah, she did in her note.
Right.
And what is the first thing he says here?
You left without saying goodbye. Even to the children.
And for the first time, he was hurt.
Yeah.
You see his emotions about the whole thing.
Well, it was wrong of me. Forgive me.
Why did you?
Please don't ask me. Anyway, the reason no longer exists.
Yeah.
Because she's decided. She knows, you know.
And then right on cue, the Baroness.
There's the Baroness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she says she's playing the same game.
Fräulein Maria, you've returned. Isn't it wonderful, Georg?
And Maria, because she is classy, wishes them happiness and congratulates them.
Yeah.
I think when the Baroness says,
Thank you, my dear.
I think it is a fully sincere, like, I understand why you came back, and I understand that you are making the correct, polite move by congratulating me. And I think there's a realness to her gratitude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they ask if she's back to stay. And I think she makes this decision in the spur of the moment. And she says,
Only until arrangements can be made for another governess.
This is great. This whole little mini section of the scene is great because Maria runs up the stairs a little bit like a child who is running away from a situation that they're embarrassed by, right? There's no reason for Maria to run up the stairs, but she does because she's embarrassed and hurt, right? When she turns, as you said, the spur of the moment thing, watch Eleanor watching Georg, or the Baroness watching Georg. She's watching his eyes. She sees that he's still in love with her, and she reacts to it by herself. So if you rewatch the scene and just focus on her, she is playing all these levels that you're going to see later for why she accepts not accepts, but certainly saw it coming that he was going to break up with her, right? And end things. She sees it. She even looks to the ground. She totally knows what's going on. And so when she says arrangements or whatever, you can see that Georg has a wave of, or a quick wave of sadness about that. And Eleanor reacts to it as an actress. So, she's doing great work here quietly, next to all the bigger things. Yeah.
It's later at night. Maria comes out still in that beautiful dress and walks down towards the water. Georg's on the balcony.
This is a different dress, right? Because
it's a different dress.
Yeah, this is the blue dress she wore when they were, when he was singing the song, whatever. The dress she wears coming up is green.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
It's a different dress. So this is more, and I wonder, and so the question is, why is she wearing this dress? Is she trying to maybe in some indirect way, subtle way, like have him remember when he was in love, when he was in love with her, or the moment they had, like, I don't know.
What you've said is perfectly motivatable and totally makes sense. And I cannot believe that of Maria. My Maria does not. The Baroness would do that, but Maria would never occur to her.
Hashtag, you mean the rebellious Maria?
Yes.
Who was rebellious towards the church and the Reverend Mother?
My Maria would never do that, John.
Hashtag your Maria. I think it's very possible that she's wearing that dress on purpose.
Well, it's regardless, she looks gorgeous and the shot is absolutely stunning. Yeah. And part of things like you can see those lights coming from across the lake that are reflecting across the lake. And you have to remember this, that means that film crew, they had to send people all the way around the lake they had generators and they had to do these lighting. I mean, this isn't Lawrence of Arabia or Ben-Hur. It's a big movie, This is still a lot to do. And he is watching her, and the Baroness comes out onto the balcony wearing what I will describe as an absolutely fabulous red dress with beautiful, rhinestone sparkly things on it. I just think this is a stunning dress. And she sees that he is looking at her, and you can see her gather herself up. I mean, there's a lot of people putting on a show in one way or another, having to fulfill a role, having to create a performance.
You have no idea what kind of trouble I'm having trying to decide what to give you for a wedding present. Oh, I know. I'm enough. But I do want you to have some little trifle for the occasion.
I think if you wanted to hang out with a person who could make wonderful, witty, urbane small talk all night in the most elegant of circumstances, you could do a lot worse than the Baroness Schrader.
Yeah, I agree.
That she's really good at just being witty and smart and saying the right kind of things in that sort of way.
Right. Like, how do we get, or if you, or she'd be great too, when there's an uncomfortable conversation that's happened about a topic for 10 minutes, she would be great to get us back into another topic and a much more happier topic for sure.
You know what it is?
Witticism.
It's the same kind of thing I was saying about Georg, of the dad who's trying to like, hey, everybody, let's all, like, I'm going to distract you, and that's what she's doing. She's going like,
Oh, yeah.
we're in this moment, and I'm going to lighten everything up, if I can.
And I'm going to talk about everything else.
Everything else.
Except
Exactly.
what you're fucking doing in my
Yeah.
face. And that's the thing. You got some people get after the Baroness. Like, Georg is kind of a jerk here too. I mean, I have to say, I know a lot of you want to defend Georg, and a lot of you want to hate the Baroness, but she is the subject to the situation that Georg is clearly in love with someone else, doesn't have the stones to tell her until Maria comes back, was more than willing to go through with this sham of a wedding,
Yep.
And so to me, I just kind of push back a little bit on this with Georg. But I will say this. I wonder if also, I want to backtrack a little bit and also say maybe the dress, she's wearing the dress for us as the audience as well, because that's the last time we kind of saw her in love with Georg. So we as the audience are kind of maybe subconsciously transported back that when we know that dress symbolizes that moment where they really started to have feelings for each other. And so Georg watching her and watching the Baroness navigate this, and costumes are important. We don't talk about it a lot on the show. Maybe it's because we're not costumers, we're not designers.
Sure.
Colors are important. She's wearing a light blue,
Mm-hmm.
flowing, beautiful dress that conveys an innocence, a purity.
Totally.
Right? The Baroness, is wearing a red and black dress that is form-fitting. And so there is almost a sense of, subconsciously again, that she's the evil one here, right? And so that's what you're getting. Even though I think her behavior here is not evil at all. She is in essence the rival to the character we want to win. So this is the smart, intelligent things that costumers do with colors and designs that subconsciously work on us as viewers. And I think it's when the moments pop up, I love to highlight it because I'm nowhere near intelligent about this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but
me
when it
neither.
does pop up, I like to talk about it.
Yeah. I'm really glad you did. I think in this scene, I have different feelings about the Baroness as we go along, but I really love her and feel deep sympathy for her in this scene.
Yes.
And I think we've all been in situations where you knew what you were supposed to. You were a little uncomfortable with something, but you knew what you were supposed to do in that situation. And so you did the thing you were supposed to do, which led you deeper into the situation that you weren't that comfortable.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I did that thing. Now I have to do this thing.
Yeah.
I said I was going to do the thing, and now I got to, and then you're like,
Grateful for it. Yeah.
decades could go by and you're deep in an unhappy situation, and we're right there. This moment right here. And I think, and I don't know what you think, but there's a moment where she's going on about yachts and bathtubs and all the lovely little small talk she's making. And he says, Elsa. And I believe that he was going to tell her at that moment.
Yeah.
And she rolls past him.
Yep. She doesn't want to hear it. She wants to maybe make a final attempt to keep him. Yeah.
And I think she does an incredible job of doing a performance where we can see the cracks and we can see the emotions underneath, but she's still doing a good job of kind of keeping up a good front. I think it's really, really nice.
That's why it's such a shame that she never became bigger as an actress, because I think she handles this role so well. And this could have easily been a one-dimensional role. We've talked about Plummer, talking with the directors about how to enrich the character he's playing, give more levels. Eleanor is finding the levels in the silences, in between the lines. And it's great to see her doing that. It adds more complexity to the character of the Baroness.
And I'll say this, as a writer-director, and I'm curious to hear your opinion as an actor. There are times where there's the script.
Yes.
And the actor isn't quite figuring it out yet. And they're going like, I don't get this character. I don't, and my response is like, keep reading it, keep thinking about it, and point them in the right direction, because I think there's more there.
You'll get there. Yeah.
And there are other times where the actor says, there's nothing here, and they need to fight to get them to put something in there,
Yeah.
because it isn't in the script. It's not there, and they have to get it. And I think it sounds like Christopher Plummer, and I think the Baroness, I think they pushed to get something here,
Agreed.
I thought a trip around the world would be lovely. Then I said, oh, Elsa, there must be someplace better to go. But don't worry, darling.
Elsa.
Yes, Georg?
It's no use.
And there's a great reaction shot of her, and then he says,
You and I have been dishonest to both of us. Utterly unfair to you.
that is a very honorable breakup.
Yes. Agreed. And She takes it. And I love the way Robert Wise frames her. It's classic. It's old school with a little bit of the softer filter. Her eyes are starting to get a little bit watery. It's not crying, but she knows what's coming. And so we as an audience, and I hope most people now will see it when they're older, feel like you said, Steve, a sympathy for her, because this is going to break her heart, whether she knew it was right or wrong to be with him. It's still going to break her heart because she put a lot of effort into trying to make this work.
Well, and what I find so interesting about, I think this is a great scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Agree.
And what I find so interesting, I think it is, in a weird way, it's a parallel between the confrontation between Maria and Georg at the water.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean? It's like, this is another just great acting scene between two characters playing a lot of layers with a lot of complexity, because he starts to go into the speech that he's thought about in his head, where he goes, when two people talk of marriage, and he has a whole thing that he's ready to say, and she does not want to hear it. Because for me, it's her way of keeping her power. If she sat and listened to the speech, she would be hurt, and maybe she would cry, and maybe she'd be upset, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to walk away with her head up. So she goes,
Don't say another word, Georg, please. You see, there are other things I've been thinking of. Fond as I am of you, I really don't think you're the right man for me. You're much too independent.
She turns it on him. She goes, you're not breaking up with me, I'm breaking up with you. And he knows kind of what she's doing, And I love, by the way, there's a, I don't know exactly what filter they have on this lens, but there are lenses, filters you can put on lenses that make lights sparkle. And so each of those little rhinestones on her dress are just twinkling just a little bit.
Yeah.
That's just a little too much.
Yeah.
And she says, what's wrong with him? And I love this line. She says,
and I need someone who needs me desperately. Or at least needs my money desperately.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
By the way, this is probably the scene that Christopher Plummer worked the most with the writer. Which really, really shows.
Yeah. Sometimes actors know what the fuck they're talking about. I know they can be irritating. I know they can be irritating and pushy, and I don't mean this towards Steve. I mean overall. You've heard the stories of actors behind the scenes, and Lord knows sometimes I do give shit to actors who go too far with their ego or whatever, but intelligent actors understand scenes and understand how to bring out what they've got to do with the words that are written and the camera angles you want to do, right? And so pushing for more layers, more complexity, those are the differences between a good movie and an Oscar-winning movie. And I think that's this scene is incredible because of that.
I've enjoyed every moment we've had together. And I do thank you for that. Now, if you'll forgive me, I'll go inside, pack my little bags, and return to Vienna where I belong.
First of all, the Baroness does not have little bags. I bet she has 17 steamer trunks. And then she says, after a long pause,
and somewhere out there is a young lady who I think will never be a nun.
And his reaction, because I don't think he knew how clearly she had read him. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think he knew that she kind of suspected maybe, but that line is like, oh shit, you saw right through me. And this great smile, she kisses him on the cheek and says, Auf Wiedersehen, darling.
Yeah.
And that is the last we see of Baroness Schrader.
She should have sang it. That would have been perfect. But no, it's a beautiful, look, listen, this is what makes the movie, again, first time watching the movie, this is what separates this movie from what I had expected from this film. There's so much more emotion to this film than I anticipated. And this back and forth is so rare. This kind of, because we've seen this kind of scene a million times in movies, but it's so rare to have a scene where both people retain their power by the end and both people have a genuine affection for the other person by the end as well. He doesn't say, no, I've got to say what I need to say. He lets her get out what she needs to get out because she needs to have the dignity to walk away for herself. And he gives her that. And she kisses him on the cheek instead of the lips to say, Auf Wiedersehen, darling, I accept the situation. I'm going to leave now. And he lets her leave. He doesn't stop her. He doesn't try to make himself feel better. He doesn't try to say something to make it seem that he's not that bad of a guy. This is very mature. And it's rare to see it in films. And I love this scene for that reason.
So there are two songs that were cut from the Broadway musical coming here, and both of those songs are Max and Baron Schrader songs.
Oh.
And one of them is called How Can Love Survive? And the other song is called No Way to Stop It. And one of the members of our advisory board, Mackenzie Horner, brought up this song in terms of the politics involved in it and why do we think it was cut. And you can find this song on the original Broadway soundtrack. You can find versions of it on YouTube. It is this song that essentially was replaced by the scene that we just discussed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So this is the song that leads to the breakup with the Baroness.
You dear, attractive, dewy-eyed idealist, today you have to learn to be a realist.
You may be bent on doing deeds of daring do, but up against a shark, what can a herring do?
Because this is all about whether or not to stand up to the Nazis.
Be wise, compromise.
Compromise and be wise.
Let them think you're on their side, be non-committal.
I will not bow my head to the men I despise. You won't have to bow your head, just stoop a little.
How do you think this changes the nature of this whole story to have this song?
Well, I think it would have made a much more stronger defiance in the movie from Georg, and a much more and added more complicity to Max and the Baroness, right? Because it's the Baroness who's singing it, or who's singing it?
It's Max and the Baroness singing together to Georg.
So they're essentially saying to him, throw away your ethics and ideals, or just kind of cover them up a little bit and go along with the crowd. Right. And that's what they're basically saying in the song. And at the risk of pissing off some of our listeners who hate us getting political, even though movies are political.
That's what this movie is. I mean, and that's what this song is, you know.
Yes. I think it's very important to have people who are willing to stand up, because there are so many people who are willing to bow their heads a little bit just to get along, just to get through. And I understand, because people have bills to pay, people have children, people have mortgages, people are scared to lose money, go homeless. I understand it all, right? But I also think that it's important to have people in power who will push back, people of stature who will push back and highlight this. So I think the song would have absolutely highlighted that even more, and it would have maybe turned the movie into a little more of a commentary about fascism and Nazism than necessarily about these kids becoming, or about this family becoming a success and singing and all of that. So I think it would have been a dangerous song to include. I think they still accomplish it in the back 40 minutes of the movie when you see Georg call out Max. I think you get the accomplishment still of what they're trying to do. And Max clearly, as we're going to see in the scene, he stoops his head just a little bit with the Heil Hitler. He doesn't fully do the Heil, but he absolutely stoops a little bit, and Georg refuses to. And so in the end, Max helps Georg escape. So that's his way of not stooping. So I like that situation. So the song, I don't think was necessary, because they eventually accomplished the goal within the construct of the version they wanted to tell.
I don't even think it's such a left-right thing. I mean, I had to push myself not to stoop sometimes with people on my side, with the left, where I go like, I feel like this goes too far and I shouldn't just go along. I should speak my opinion, even when I know I'm going to get attacked from that side. And I think it's a powerful song, and I think it would have huge advantages for the show. And this is this thing that I think people don't understand about making movies, which is it's frequently an either or. It's like, and I think if you include this song, it strengthens the Nazi story and the resistance story. But I also think if this is the reason for the breakup with Baroness Schrader, it totally weakens the Maria story. Because then it isn't, it's not, hey, I'm really in love with this other person. It's saying, I can't be around you. You're not going to stand up to the Nazis.
Right.
And that's a different movie.
I agree. 100%.
And then you don't get the release in the next scene with this love song that we're about to go to. Yeah. And so, and this is the either or. It's not, you can't, I've said this so many times to partners I'm working with projects with, of going, I really want to have this and I want to have this. I want to have my cake and eat it too. Can we figure out a way that I can keep both of these things? And sometimes you can't,
Yeah.
So we have returned to the gazebo where we had You are 16 going on 17. And we hear,
Hello.
and there is Georg. And she's still, because she's a servant, essentially. So her first reaction is,
Was there something you wanted?
No. Sit down, please.
and she sits, and he asks permission to sit with her, which I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sits, and this is a thing where I always forget this staging principle because I just never remember to do it. If I put two people on a bench, I've always put them facing the same way. Because it doesn't really make sense for people to sit on a bench and face opposite directions. That's a little bit strange, but it's so great filmically, which is what they do here. And I never remember to do it.
I was thinking, and I was wondering two things.
And you could see that Georg is a little nervous too.
Yeah, of course.
Why did you run away to the Abbey? And what was it that made you come back?
Well, I had an obligation to fulfill, and I came back to fulfill it.
Is that all?
Christopher Plummer says, and it totally makes sense what I know about his character, all of his instincts were to play this scene cynically and not romantically. Because he doesn't he's not a warm and fuzzy guy.
Yeah.
So he kept putting some spin on it, like a little distance on it, a little cynicism, a little, unromanticness. And Robert Wise kept pulling him back. He's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And at least what Christopher Plummer said in the most recent documentary that I watched him talking about this was he said, Robert Wise was totally 100% right. And I was going to break but he also said it was good that I was pushing him because it didn't get too sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But Robert Wise put him in and helped him find the right spot to occupy within it, which that's what a director's job is,
Yeah.
And he also, by the way, gives a huge amount of credit to the DP, which is Ted McCord, for just how gorgeous this scene is, which it really is.
Yeah, I agree.
And I missed the children.
Only the children?
No. Yes. Isn't it right I should have missed them?
Oh, yes, of course. I was only hoping that perhaps you...
And now she's starting to realize what we're talking about. And so she kind of leads it like, yes? And this is where he really exposes himself, I think, he says.
Well, nothing was the same when you were away, and it'll be all wrong again after you leave. And I just thought perhaps you might change your mind.
Well, I'm sure the Baroness will be able to make things fine for you.
And she stands up and she walks away, and he says,
Maria, there isn't going to be any Baroness.
There isn't?
I think she's scared to turn to him at this moment because she's filled with so much hope.
Well, we've called off our engagement, you see, and...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. You are?
Mm-hmm.
Which I love. And she says in the same tone as he said you are, she says, you did?
You did?
Yes. Well, you can't marry someone when you're...
And he's very close to her now.
Yeah.
In love with someone else.
And she shakes her head, and he grabs her chin, pulls her in. And I just think this is one of the great kisses in movie history. The way it's staged, the silhouettes, the lighting, the closeness of it, the intimacy, the simplicity of it, the gentleness of it. I think this is a fantastic first kiss.
Yeah.
So to do the lighting, they have these huge arc lights, which are the big, old-fashioned, really, really powerful lights. Because by the way, when you're doing silhouettes in particular, you need to throw a lot of light in it to get the silhouettes. Well, these big arc lights of the 60s, when they were going full power, they made these groaning sounds that, according to Christopher Plummer and Julie Andrews, sounded a little like you were having some intestinal distress. And so in the midst of them playing this really romantic scene, they keep hearing like, and they keep cracking up. And what they say is that part of that basically Ted McCord and Robert Wise relit the scene into these full silhouettes to hide the fact that they kept breaking the scene and laughing over and over and over again as they were shooting it.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to do an intimate, romantic, very close scene when you're hearing giant mechanical farting noises.
It seems like a lot was going on the set to try to get things correct. The other actors were having to overcome a lot of things.
And by the way, the score that's playing under is The Sound of Music. Is that, like each time they're really picking which theme to go with it.
Yeah.
The Reverend Mother always says, When the Lord closes a door, somewhere he opens a window.
And I love that he signed on with the Reverend Mother at this point.
What else does the Reverend Mother say?
That you have to look for your life.
Is that why you came back?
And now the underscore is his song. Now we're hearing Edelweiss playing underneath.
And have you found it?
I think I have.
It's an interesting scene because, A, they're in the gazebo.
Yep.
And the last time we were in the gazebo, it was to see Liesel and her feelings for Rolf and her do their duet, right? So this is clearly the place where love is expressed because Rolf kisses her at the end of the song. So he's the one that comes to her. And just like him here in this scene now, Georg is the one that comes to Maria to say, I love you first. He says it first, right? Kisses her, takes her face in his hand and brings her to him. He's holding her face. And so there's a lot of genuine love being expressed here. So the gazebo is the symbol of love. And sometimes love, when it comes, can make you feel like a 16-year-old all over again or a 17-year-old all over again. So I like that there's a completely different approach to filming the gazebo here because this is an older love, but it still has that youthful nervousness to it. So I just love the way the scene is shot all around. And when we get into the song here momentarily,
it's a great point. And it kind of, it's funny. This is why I think this is a great movie because I'm going to interpret it slightly differently. But I think both interpretations totally work. Which to me, like the first scene is young love, and it is to some degree the illusion of love. It's like Lisa wants to be in love. She's in love with being loved. She's not in love with Rolf. Rolf is certainly not in love with her. But they're playing with love and they're play acting love.
Yeah.
And now we're in the real deal. You know, like this is mature love. And this is like, and what's interesting too is Georg and the Baroness were play acting at love on some level. That was also like the false love.
Right.
And now we're finally into the real love. And the song we go into is Something Good, which was the other song in addition to Confidence that was specifically written for this movie. Again, I kind of miss the lyrics of Oscar Hammerstein. I think these are a little bit awkward. They don't quite have that magic, but it's still a lovely song.
Perhaps I had a wicked childhood. Perhaps I had a miserable youth. But somewhere in my wicked, miserable past, there must have been a moment of truth.
First, she sings about, it's somewhere in my youth or childhood, I must have done something good to have this moment. And then he sings his version of it. And then there's that slow push in there in that close 50-52 shot as the camera pushes in on them. And then they join in singing the last part together.
Yeah.
I like too in the midst of this song that he says, do you know when I first started loving you?
That night at the dinner table when you sat on that ridiculous pine cone.
Which means he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So when he was giving all the stuff about, are you always going to give us this wonderful version of indigestion? He knew what was happening. He wasn't, he had totally understood what was happening. And she says,
I knew the first time you blew that silly whistle.
Wow. And then the song has ended and they're kind of holding each other. And he says, Maria,
is there anyone I should go to ask permission to marry you?
And then together they say,
well, why don't we ask the children?
I will give you a little bit more history.
Okay.
So Maria, the real Maria, did rush back to the Abbey in the late 20s.
Okay.
Afraid. But the reason she rushed back is not because Georg was going to marry someone else and he was in love with her. She rushed back because Georg asked her to marry him and she was not in love with him. Fact is, he wasn't really in love with her. He was like, I could really use someone to help me with all these kids. I think there are 9 kids.
Yeah. Well,
and he's like, and so he was 25
10.
Years older.
There was 10 because they had 3. Oh, no, right.
Yeah.
His
but I think,
7 and then they had
3.
Yeah.
So it was, I think it was 7. And then they had 2 when they were in Austria. Maria did. And then they had the 3rd kid when they were in the US.
Yes.
So it was very much a marriage of, she liked him enough, but she definitely wasn't. This is an old guy. She wasn't in love with him.
Right.
And she goes back and basically the the version of the Reverend Mother at the real Abbey said, no, you should go. It's a very practical marriage. You don't have to love someone to marry them. Just go back. It'll be a good place for you to be, and you can take care of the kids. And she did like the kids. And so she's like, okay. And she went to a very much a marriage of convenience. The kids, as opposed to the kids in the movie, they were not happy about this marriage at all.
Oh, wow.
They weren't big fans. And Maria was intense and angry and a disciplinarian and had a big temper. And so they didn't want a new mother. And also, remember, the kids are much older. And one of them's a doctor.
Right.
Like, they're much older kids. But they did have what sounds like a happy, successful marriage. It also sounds like Maria was very, very tough on Georg. Maria was a tough person. But in this story, we cut to this cathedral, and Maria is being helped on with the veil by the nuns of the abbey, and we hear the bells ringing, and Reverend Mother's there who gives her blessing, and we're in the courtyard as the nuns follow her. Then there's this huge organ hit, and Liesel's there as we walk into this incredible cathedral, and she marches up with the amazing train of her wedding dress behind her. By the way, Julie Andrews says that this wedding gown might be the most beautiful costume she ever wore in her entire acting career.
No surprise. I mean, this thing looks like Diana and Charles, this whole wedding. I couldn't believe how massive this wedding was in the movie.
It is stunning. The lighting is beautiful. The music, we hear a chorus of How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria as she's heading down the aisle. Every shot is amazing. All the costuming is great. Georg in his military outfit looks incredible up as he goes to meet here. And they kneel before this priest. This is the actual bishop of that cathedral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Who apparently kept messing up the shot.
That's why you hire professionals.
Yeah. And I mean, it all just looks stunning. And the camera kind of cranes up along the religious iconography as it goes up. And then with a really perfect cut, as we're hearing the bells ring, we cut out to outside in Salzburg and watch these bells ring. And it's joyful and powerful and romantic. And I will say this is the end of the second movie.
Yes, right.
You know what I mean? Like the first movie was about the kids and dad.
Right.
And then we resolved that. And then we immediately introduced this love triangle.
Yeah.
Now we have resolved that story. Movie number 2 has ended.
Right.
And what's so great about the transition is you're listening to the bells, the happy wedding bells.
Yeah.
And then the bells start to sound more dissonant in this weird way and uncomfortable. And then we look out at this courtyard, and the courtyard is now totally Nazified. We see swastikas everywhere. We see troops marching through it. The bells are very dissonant, and we're like, oh crap, we've gone to a completely different place.
Yeah. Well, before we leave movie 2, can I have a couple of words here? I would like to say.
Yes, sorry.
It's no, please don't apologize. This is before we get into the uncomfortable parts. I want to live in bliss for one more.
Yes,
for a couple more comments. And that is that I love the way this is staged. I mean, this is out of nowhere what Robert Wise does here in staging this. The shots he uses from above, from the side, walking into the light, all of this is so regal, but in a way that's not distant or aloof or maybe subconsciously condescending because the rich, this kind of thing. It's so full of respect and honor and nobility. It's beautiful. And I love the usage of the song, bringing back that song, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? And then showcasing that those things that made Maria out of place for the nuns are the things that make her perfectly placed to be his wife. And so the irony of that song having a whole nother meaning as she's walking down, I thought was great. And yeah, I love that we don't have to hear them exchanging the vows, or you get what's going on. And the camera pans up, like you said, and we're in a place of joy and then quickly moved into a place of dread and terror. So the movie only lets you live in bliss for just a few seconds before it brings the reality crashing down upon you, which I like that about great movies. They don't let you live too long in those happy places because they have a bigger story they're trying to tell now as the movie progresses in these next 40 minutes.
I think if you don't know this movie, it's like, because you said it just perfectly. You're in this blissful state and you're like, oh, great. They're got together and everybody's cool and everyone's going to be happy. Nazis,
They said the movie was 2.5 hours. I feel like it's done. It feels like it's done. What Nazis?
I was going to say this at the end, but the version, they hated this in West Germany and Austria, and they frequently just showed the movie with only the first 2 acts. The movie ended at the wedding.
Sacrilege.
Yep.
Sacrilege. Censorship.
But it's a perfect, I mean, it is a beautiful,
I know, you're right.
They get married, like,
You're right.
it's beautiful. It's like, okay.
Yeah, you're right.
You know who else was not happy about this? Was the elders of the city of Salzburg. They'd spent, I mean, this is 15 years after World War II, or 16 years, 17 years. They didn't want to see their main town square covered in Nazi iconography. And they were like, absolutely not. You cannot put giant swastika flags. We just got rid of all that stuff. And finally, Robert Wise said, okay, you know what we'll do instead? I'll get newsreel footage of actual Salzburg from the Nazi era, and we'll just show the real footage instead of this.
Whoa.
That's hardball, man.
Yeah, it is.
And they went,
We'll
they
show
gave
how
in.
much you gave in to them back in the 40s. We'll just show that.
We'll show that. We'll show the real stuff. And they totally gave in. It's so funny because all the descriptions here of Robert Wise is just a lovely, sweet man. And when we did West Side Story, I know there's so much where he had these towering, particularly Jerome Robbins personalities that he had to deal with. Yeah. And he is really good at keeping everybody calm and keeping the wheels on the boat. It just seems like a lovely, lovely man. Because there's got to be some steel, you know?
Worked with Wells, right? So once you've been with Wells, I feel like everyone else is a pale imitation afterwards, so you can deal with it.
So there's, troops marching around. There's, a car banner with swastikas that pulls up, and out comes Herr Zeller, followed by the Gestapo as they walk into this amphitheater where we see Max practicing with the kids. He walks up and says,
Heil Hitler.
Oh, good afternoon, Herr Zeller.
Perhaps you've not heard. I'm now the Gauleiter. Heil Hitler.
And then Max, you could see that it costs him, but he's also a guy who's just going to get along, and he does this little awkward, small.
Heil Hitler.
And again, I think it is very clear subtext that Max is a gay man.
Oh, yes. That's an excellent point I hadn't even thought of, because I know we talked in the second part about it. Wow. Yes, of course.
I don't think Max survives the war.
Especially after he helps them escape. I don't think so either. But this back and forth is a microcosm of fascism. And I want to make it very clear, and I don't care who gets mad at this, because we were presented with Herr Zeller earlier in the film. He is a grandstanding, need for power type of guy, right? Max certainly has his questionable ideas of trying to force a family into singing so you can make money off of it. That's funny. Commentary on the rich, all funny stuff. But you see that Herr Zeller is eager to embrace this fascism, thrusts that hand in the air, because I truly believe people who embrace fascism embrace it because they feel a powerlessness in their lives. Yes, some people are evil and just want to control people. I get that, and hurt people and get their jollies off that, sure. But some of the lower level people do this because they are powerless in their lives. Rolf later on is another example of that. And so the way Herr Zeller does this so forcefully, and perhaps you haven't heard my new title, blah, blah, all of that is a commentary in a very subtle way on the people who become fascists. And Max, who we've seen, yes, has his flaws or whatever, but he's a good person at heart. He gets along by throwing the hands, but no, immediately as he puts his hand up, he immediately goes to rub his mustache or rub his chin because he doesn't want to stay in that position long and wants to kind of blow it off or play it off in essence when he does that. So there's the difference. He doesn't have to embrace this fascism because he is happy doing what he's doing in his life. Other people embrace it because they need to feel that power over other people for their own sad reasons. And so I think that's the commentary being made quickly in this exchange from Herr Zeller and Max.
Well, and remember what we set up is like we had this scene with the older couple at the ball where they said, oh, it's so great to hear these kids. It's so Austrian, these kids raising their voices in song. And Herr Zeller came up and was like, well, you don't think we're going to sing? Like, wait, nothing's going to, he kept saying, nothing is going to change for Austria. It's all going to be the same. And it is not, because the next thing he said is
I have just come from the house of Captain von Trapp. Incidentally, the only one in the neighborhood not flying the flag of the Third Reich since the Anschluss, but we have dealt with that situation.
Now, the way they dealt with the situation, we could deduce, was they went to the butler, Franz, who was perfectly happy to put up a Nazi flag. They tried to talk to the housekeeper, who wouldn't give them any information.
Yeah.
So way to go, Frau Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you, Frau Schmidt.
Well, he's on his honeymoon trip. He's not been in touch with us.
Are you asking me to believe that the captain has not communicated with his children in over a month?
Herr Zeller, how many men do you know who communicate with their children while on their honeymoon?
So there's some pressure going on that we want to get Captain Von Trapp to do something. And then Max, because Max is show people.
And may I congratulate you, that is, your people, on deciding to allow the festival to go on tonight as planned?
Why should it not go on? Nothing in Austria has changed. Singing and music will show this to the world. Austria is the same.
After he's just clearly demonstrated that Austria is not remotely the same.
And I love Max essentially othering him by saying, your people.
Your
right?
people,
Your
yeah.
people allowed this to happen. So he's othering himself, or othering him from him. Like he's basically claiming that he's from another sect of this whole situation. And so I love that as a pushback, his subtle way of pushing back to the situation. You know.
And then Herr Zeller gives another Heil Hitler. And I think this one even more so, when Max knows he has to return it, and then he kind of smells his hand, like almost like his hand has been sullied.
Yes.
They ask if father's in trouble, and Max says,
Well, he doesn't have to be. The thing to do these days is to get along with everybody.
which is essentially what that song is that we cut.
Yep.
You
That's
know,
what I mean. They got the intention of the song
Yeah.
through in this interaction.
and Brigitte, always the smart one.
Uncle Max, are you sure Father will approve of our singing in public?
Oh, we'll be pleased and proud.
It's like, I don't think so.
Liesel!
And there's Rolf, looking fully Nazified.
Yep.
You know, he looks like Hitler Youth or whatever it is that they've signed him up for. He's in that tan out uniform. And she's excited because he still represents this romantic thing for her.
Rolf, I'm so glad to see you. It's been
Good afternoon. You will take this, please, and deliver it to your father as soon as he comes home.
He is occupying a role. And I think what you said about him in the last part of like, this is a lost kid who thinks he found who he's supposed to be.
Yep.
He found a place to belong.
Look, this is important because if you're watching the movie, yes, it works for whatever it's doing there for Maria and all that, but Maria's not the only one who's looking for her place in the film. And Rolf, I think you bring that up so well, Steve. Rolf was also looking for his place in the film. And remember how nervous he was when the captain would call him out. And this is clearly a young kid who is not sure what he's going to do with his life. And there's nothing fascists love more than young people whose minds are willing to believe whatever narrative they pump into their minds to make them angry, to make them question everybody. And the fact that he says, oh, it's our job to know everything about everybody, right? This idea, fascism lies that it's about freedom, but it's really about controlling you. And they present it in a way that's like, oh no, we just, you know, it's better for us to know what's going on so we can combat it as quickly as possible, right? And so this is what he represents. And I love the telegram back and forth. The telegram that used to represent their love and their secret moments together is now representing something more uglier. And she says, even tries to give him the option to deliver the telegram later so they can have a private moment together, even though she told Maria that she's getting past it, that he hasn't delivered telegrams like he used to. He shuts that down and says he's more concerned with more important matters. And so he's rejecting love in order to embrace hate. And sadly, that's what Rolf does, and then later on does again to the captain.
He even says,
I am now occupied with more important matters. And your father better be too if he knows what's good for him.
Right. And that's the thing, right? That's another element of fascism. It is to give people who feel powerless, as I said earlier, the semblance of power. And what is more powerful than telling the people in power that you can get them in trouble or you can tell them what to do? And so that, again, it's that desire for power, right? Desire for control. And him saying that, he would have never said that to the captain, right? But he can say that here in times past, but he can say that here if he knows what's good for him. And it's like, this guy made your balls liquefy every time you were in front of him. And now you want to pop off because you've got this swastika and this fascist movement behind you. It's fake strength, fake power, and fake, I guess that fake strength and fake power, man.
On an individual level, I totally agree with you. But I actually don't agree with you, because what he talks about is a we. He says, we are this. The we is not fake power. The Third Reich, the Nazis in Austria, is totally real power. And the reason I say that is that, we talked since the beginning of the Cine-Files about status and ideas of status and what people are willing to do to get status. I don't think it's just fascism. I think if you look at Henry Hill in Goodfellas, he's looking for a place to belong, and he sees these people who have status and power. And when they beat up the postman who delivered his grades, he goes, oh, I'm into that. I want to be part of this group. And that's how he gains his identity. Whether it's like drug dealers or mafioso or wherever it is, Rolf is a person who is lost. And then he sees a group that has power. And he goes, I want to be a part of that group. And then I have power.
Sure. You're absolutely right. I'm just addressing fascism
Totally.
but you're totally right on that. Because, the opening line of Goodfellas is, as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. So you're right. You're 100% right.
Well, and I think young men in particular, whether it's, a racist group or anything, or in a positive way, just the football team, like these, I want to be part of the popular people, the powerful people, the happening people, that's what Rolf wants. And it's so fucking sad,
Yeah.
Partially because there's this beautiful girl that actually wants him without any of that.
Right.
You could have Liesel. Like, why would you want to have it? Instead, you got a bunch of fucking Nazis.
You're not going to dance around a gazebo with those guys.
No.
Unless it's a Mel Brooks film, I suppose.
There you go. Springtime for Hitler and Germany. I love that movie. Anyway, we cut to a Nazi flag, the Nazi flag that has been hung at the Von Trapp villa, and Georg tears it down and rips it in two.
Defiance! Yeah. Defiance!
The other crazy thing I think occurred to me in working on prepping this is that it's not just that we have 3 stories and we're now in the third movie here. Yeah. The third movie isn't Maria's story. Maria really moves to the background.
Oh, great point.
This is Georg's story.
Yeah, Georg's story, yes.
He is the lead now. It's about Georg and the Nazis. That's what this third movie is about. And the other car comes up, and there are the kids. And of course, they're thrilled to see Dad. They're thrilled to see Maria. By the way, if you look at Maria's costumes, they're much more mature from this point forward in the film.
Yes.
She's no longer a girl. She's a woman. That's very intentional. Georg holds up the flag to Max. And then one of the kids says, we're going to sing in the festival tonight. And I think Georg is very dangerous when he starts smiling at Max.
Yeah. I think Christopher Plummer in life is very dangerous when he starts smiling at you, whether it's on camera or not.
Max! Somehow I recall having made it quite clear to you how I feel about my family singing in public.
But the committee heard them. They were enchanted.
And Max then even tries to make the political play, which is a bad error.
This is for Austria.
For Austria? There is no Austria.
But the Einschluss happened peacefully. Let's at least be grateful for that.
And man, when Georg hears that word, grateful.
Grateful? Max, sometimes I don't believe I know you.
Oh, I love this back and forth, Steve, because this is, again, it reaches to that song that you were talking about that they cut out. Max is a person who does just want to get along. And sometimes people just want to get along. They want to focus on the positive moments or try to create some kind of narrative about it. Oh, it was peaceful. It was peaceful because everyone was afraid to get shot and killed. And that's essential. So he's grabbing onto one part of the narrative conveniently to try to convince Georg to go along with this. But Georg, who is, of course, a soldier himself, a warrior himself, he understands. He knows what's going on. He can sense it. He sees it. And so he knows what this is leading to. So he pushes back on him and says, no, we can't go along with this. We can't just stoop our heads a little bit. We have to fight back. And again, I love the fact that this is a guy who, with power, with money, with status, who knows what these people want to do and wants to fight back and calls out the people who just want to get along, because those are the people that need to step into the fight, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, to stop fascism from rising and controlling a country or an area of the world. So it's an interesting exchange, because you're right. The movie just completely changes to be about Georg's journey. And this is one of those beats that accentuates how much he wants to resist Nazi rule.
He has got to at least pretend to work with these people. You must convince him.
Max, I can't ask him to be less than he is.
Max exits, and we're with Liesel and Maria. and they kind of hug, and then she says,
Mother? That sounds so nice. I like calling you Mother.
I like hearing it.
which of course wasn't what the actual Von Trapp family kids felt about their Maria, but this one, it really works.
Mother, what do you do when you think you love someone? I mean, when you stop loving someone, or when he stops loving you.
And I think what's so great about Julie Andrews and what she does is I think she's not at Reverend Mother level of wisdom, but the distance between the woman crying in the Reverend Mother's office when we heard Climb Every Mountain to this woman is one who has found who she is and where she's supposed to be and has gained a lot of real wisdom.
Because there's a I think the age difference between Maria and Liesel, of course it doesn't mirror the age difference between Maria and Reverend Mother, but she has more wisdom than Liesel or this time in her life. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel the world is coming to an end.
And then you feel it's just beginning?
Yes.
It was that way with me, Liesl.
And then we go into their own version of You Are 16 Going on 17.
When you're 16, going on 17, waiting for life to start, somebody kind who touches your mind will suddenly touch your heart.
Which is the experience she had with Rolf. Before, it was Rolf taking the superior position. I am more grown up than you. You don't know what to do. You're naive and dumb. You have to listen to me or men are going to abuse you. And then Liesl buying completely or pretending to buy completely into Rolf's narrative and going, yes, I do have to listen to you. You take care of me. That's what I want. That's not what this is.
When that happens, after it happens, nothing is quite the same. Somehow I know I'll jump up and go if ever he calls my name.
But I think Liesl at this moment is also starting to distrust her feelings for Rolf.
Yeah.
Like the emotion is, I mean, I'm sure you've had this. We've all had this where it's like the emotion, the desire is still there, but the logical part of your brain is starting to go, this is not a good way to go.
Yeah. Eventually there's a tipping point, right? Where you have to go the other side.
And it ends with,
Wait a year.
I'll wait a year.
Just wait a year or two.
it's very sweet.
And what she's saying, it feels like the world is ending and another one is beginning. That's, maturing. When you stop being a child, that world is ending and the new one is beginning, which is you being more aware of the world, which is, a tough situation, but it's the truth.
I wonder how many times, it's not just child for me. I mean, there's a lot of times in my life,
Sure.
where I've had that sort of things are ending and things are beginning.
Right.
And then we see Dad is at the door, gestures for her to leave. And I love that this Georg, not the one we met, but this Georg takes a moment to stop and touch his daughter's face.
Because she said, right, to her, 2 hours ago, she said to him, you're not going to know Liesl if you keep going down this path. You're not even going to know your own daughter if you keep going down this path. And so the fact that he takes a moment to touch her face is kind of an indication that he did stop to get to know his daughter.
They've offered me a commission in their navy. I've been requested to accept immediately and report to their naval base at Bremerhaven tomorrow.
I knew something like this would happen. I didn't think it would be so soon.
To refuse them would be fatal for all of us. And joining them would be unthinkable.
So Georg was offered a position in the German Navy. They were looking to expand their fleet of U-boats, and he was an extremely successful U-boat commander in World War I. He had sunk 11 Allied merchant ships, and he had sunk 2 Allied warships. His family was in deep trouble financially. They were totally broke at this point, and he really considered taking the gig. And this was the only job that he really felt he was good at. You know what I mean? He wanted to be a Navy commander again. That's what he liked doing. And at right around the same time I had mentioned before is when the Von Trapp family singers were invited to sing at Hitler's birthday party.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, the eldest son, who I mentioned was a doctor, was offered a new post, a very good post at a hospital.
Well,
And I've heard both that it was a post that had belonged to a Jewish doctor who had been removed, or that it was a post where maybe there were some experimentations going on people that were. And so all three of these things were happening at the same time. They refused to sing at Hitler's birthday party. He refused to take the job as the U-boat commander, and his son refused to take this job replacing this Jewish doctor at a hospital. And Georg and the family knew maybe one of these they could get away with, but they could definitely not get away with all three of these, and they had to get the hell out of Austria.
The children all together. Don't say anything that's going to make them worry. Just get them ready. We've got to get out of Austria and this house tonight.
So we've gone into suddenly this is like an adventure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now it's like Ocean's 11 or something.
Totally. And the camera tilts down to this car. You see this car moving. You're like, why don't I hear a car? And then you realize that it's being pushed by Max and Georg and Friedrich because they don't want to start the engine.
What will Frau Schmidt and Franz say when they discover we're gone?
They'll be able to answer truthfully. They didn't know anything about it if anyone asks them.
Which I love. They were thinking about the servants, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And they go through the gate and we see Franz, fucking Nazis, watching from the window. And they get in the car and they're about to go when their lights come on and there is Herr Zeller with the Gestapo and two cars.
Something wrong with your car, Captain?
Can I tell you, as a first-time watcher of this movie, my heart just sank.
Yeah.
My heart just sank as soon. Look, seeing Franz was enough. What a prick. But then seeing Herr Zeller turn on the lights, my heart just sank. I was like, what? Because I didn't know, right? Did they live? Did they survive? I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I just remember my heart just fucking dropped.
Yep.
Oh, shit.
And he tries to pretend they couldn't get the car started. I love that his Zeller just says, Carl, start the car for them. And he walks up. Of course, the car starts right up.
I've not asked you where you and your family are going. Nor have you asked me why I'm here.
Well, apparently we're both suffering from a deplorable lack of curiosity.
It's all so lame and simultaneously brave. You know what I mean?
Well, he's unfazed by all of it. He seemingly is unfazed by all of it.
Yeah.
Right? He rolls with it all. Yeah.
And he's just like, I'm going to take you to your naval command tonight.
I'm afraid that's going to be quite impossible. You see, we, all of us, the entire family, will be singing in the festival tonight.
And Maria, who is super quick on the uptake, just like jumps right in.
I just hope we're not too late.
And you ask me to believe this, that you, Captain von Trapp, are singing in a concert.
Which, from everything we know about him, does seem extremely unlikely.
Yes.
And I love Max.
Believe me, it will be a performance beyond anything even I've dreamt of.
Zeller looks at the program and sees that only the kids' names are listed, and he says,
It says the Von Trapp family singers. And I'm the head of the Von Trapp family, am I not?
And these travel clothes that you're all wearing?
Our costumes, naturally. Herr Zeller, this night air is not good for the children's voices.
man, Maria's got some steel in her.
Yeah, she does. I mean, she's a rebel from the beginning. So you couldn't think of a better thing for her to rebel against than Nazis.
Absolutely.
She's better equipped to rebel against you.
You will sing. You will all sing. But only because that's the way I want it to be. It will demonstrate that nothing in Austria has changed.
Again, this idea that nothing in Austria has changed.
Right.
And then they're going to escort them to the symphony.
Yeah.
And I love just the looks between Maria and Georg as they're getting in the car. You could see they become partners, you know, like because she was not an equal, even in the romantic scene at the gazebo.
Yeah.
He was still Captain Von Trapp and she was still Maria the governess. And now they are husband and wife and they seem very like we are a team and we understand each other.
Right.
By the way, after the Von Trapp family escaped from Austria and left their villa, want to know who stayed at their villa when he was in Austria?
Himmler. Yeah, I did. After I watched the movie, I did some research on this section of the film. And because that's, you know, obviously that there's more of historical interest to me in that way. And so some of the stuff you find out is, you know, unsettling and sad of what happened there after they left. The audacity of these clowns.
We hear a different kind of version of Do Re Mi as we see Nazis in the crowd in this incredible amphitheater. This amphitheater was an old riding academy. So these are like some of those booths. They were stalls for the horses.
Right.
It's stone. It's absolutely beautiful. They do music festivals there. It also was really cold and really damp. I mean, you remember, you're in this old stone building on super cold, rainy days. And Christopher Plummer naturally said the only thing they could do to stay warm was just to keep drinking the whole time. And he says he probably wasn't very sober for most of this sequence.
Yes, he says he was drunk when he sang Edelweiss the second in the movie. So, well, like you said, you got to stay warm. I know.
Gotta stay warm.
When we worked at Collider, it essentially was a concrete factory we were working in. So when it would rain, oh man, it was the worst. The coldness, the dampness. I think that's one of the reasons I would constantly get bronchitis when I would get sick, because of having to go work in such a dank place all the time. So yeah, I totally get it, man.
So we finished this very different version of Doe a Deer with the audience eating it all up and Herr Zeller not pleased with it at all. And then Georg breaks away from the rest of the group and goes over to a mic and a spotlight and says,
My fellow Austrians, I shall not be seeing you again, perhaps for a very long time.
Which syncs perfectly with I'm going to be part of the Nazi Navy.
Yeah.
I would like to sing for you now a love song. I know you share this love. I pray that you will never let it die.
And he takes the guitar and goes into a beautiful rendition of Edelweiss.
Edelweiss, Edelweiss, every morning you greet me, small and white, clean and bright, you look happy to meet me.
Like I said in the last part, I think that there's a little bit too much repetition of the music. I feel it's slowing down a little bit at this point, but I love this version of Edelweiss. Herr Zeller is definitely not happy about him singing this particular song, which has the line, "Bless my homeland forever."
Yeah.
And you can see he's deeply moved, and then his voice starts cracking. And Maria is watching him. Then he just loses it. He can't keep singing.
Yeah.
And she steps out on the stage and starts singing. And I absolutely love the little and unbelievably powerful gesture she gives to the kids to say, you come on stage now. Like, it's so powerful, and I would almost say it's majestic in its confidence. You know what I mean? It's a totally nothing thing, but I absolutely love that gesture.
Yeah, agreed.
And they all join on stage and they all sing, and you could see him come back with the support of his family and the support of the woman he loves. And then the gesture to the audience, and all the audience joins in with this, and Herr Zeller is hating every second of it.
It's defiance. It's defiance.
Yeah.
In the, like art is, artistic defiance. And I love it, man.
You know what it is? I wonder if Robert Wise was thinking of this. It just popped in my brain. It's singing the Marseillaise in Casablanca in front of the Nazis.
Oh, yeah. Great.
It's that kind of a moment.
Yeah.
It only occurred to me when you said it's defiance, because that's what that moment is.
Yeah.
So the original Broadway actor, Theodore Bickel, who played Georg, told a story that after one performance, he's at the stage door and he was approached by a native Austrian who said, I love that Edelweiss, and then added with total confidence, of course, I have known it for a long time, but only in German. I don't think this story is true at all, frankly, because of course, it was not an Austrian song. It's written by Oscar Hammerstein. There is no version in German. And not only is it not an Austrian song, but this song was hated in Austria and Germany.
Oh, wow.
There was they did a version in 2005, and it received this song received terrible negative reviews from the Austrian critics, who called it boring, and they referred to the song Edelweiss as an insult to Austrian musical creation.
Good God!
And yet, many people, including me, for a long time, just assumed that this was a real Austrian song, and Ronald Reagan quoted it to the Austrian president in 1984, because he's like, as it says in your beautiful song Edelweiss, which is not an Austrian song at all.
He probably, that person probably rolled their eyes at Reagan.
Needless to say, though, this version of it with this Austrian audience in this movie is a big hit. And I love that there's just that pause between the end of the song and the applause. Just that little bit shows us how moved everyone is. And Max comes on stage and then says, hey, they're gonna come up with the judging on who wins the competition, but let's hear the Von Trapps again. And they come out again and do a version of So Long Farewell, which again, I'm like, okay, it's cute and it's all well done, but I'm a little bit like, let's move it along here. That's how I feel. I don't know how you felt.
No, I didn't mind it, but I hear what you're saying. But because I'm caught up in the tension of the Nazis.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Those Nazis always add tension.
They do.
And now, and I think also maybe there's a suspicion as you're watching it, because as each kid exits, you're like, oh, this is their plan to escape the Nazis, you know? And that totally works.
It's like the end of Blues Brothers. Are they escaping through the hatch of the stage?
Exactly. So then they have, that's funny. That's the first Blues Brothers Sound of Music reference as far as I know. And we have the cute moment with Gretel, and then we have Maria, and they all sing goodbye together as they walk off. And now we're going to get to the judging. We have the third place person who is Fräulein Schweiger, who comes out and is so happy and does 17 bows to the point where Max can't get rid of her. Second prize goes to this quintet. And I think you are right, which is what this is doing. It's like, you're really tense about Nazis. Are they going to get the family? And we're watching things that is not what I want to find out what happens to the family. And he's forcing us to watch these other things. And then we're giving the #1 award
to the Von Trapp Family Singers.
And there's a big music thing, and the spotlight goes over the door where they come out. No family Von Trapp. And then we repeat it.
The family Von Trapp.
And the spotlight goes over there, and Zeller looks around, and it goes, and none of them. And finally, a Nazi runs out and says,
they're gone.
And the music hits. And Max smiles.
And Herr Zeller knows what's going on. And see, look, the Herr Zeller's been uncomfortable the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Because his illusionary power is being challenged.
Yep.
And you can tell. And the audience are chiming in with their defiance. And so it grows. And so when they escape, because don't forget, it's going to be him that pays the price for this. That's how fascists work. If you can't produce the thing you say you're going to produce or you're assigned to produce, your head is on the block. And so you can see Max is freaking out about this as he tries to find them with the other Nazis.
Well, and we went from a private thing to a very, very public performance that he allowed to have happen. So
It's actually
Zeller's
embarrassing to him as well. Yeah.
very embarrassing to him.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
And where does the Von Trapp family go? But to the Abbey.
Of course.
And there we are with Reverend Mother, who says they're going to hide them. And the Nazis show up, and they're at the gate, and they are rude to the nuns, which, even as an atheist, I don't think you should be rude to nuns.
Yeah. Don't be rude to nuns, man. It's not cool.
And we're in this cemetery. Again, the cemetery is a set that's in L.A., but it's a great, great old-fashioned cemetery.
Oh, Reverend Mother, we didn't realize we'd put the Abbey in this danger.
No, Maria. It was right for you to come here.
We thought we might borrow your caretaker's car.
I'm afraid our car would do you no good now. I've been listening to the wireless. The borders have just been closed.
All right, the borders are closed. Then we'll drive up into the hills and go over those mountains on foot.
So now we have the plan. Yeah. And they go and hide in the shadows. And I love that Greta looks up and says,
Mother?
Yes?
Would it help if we sang about our favorite things?
No, darling. This is one time it would not help. You must be very quiet.
Because I think this gets genuinely scary.
Oh, this gets super dark. Oh, hell yeah, it does, man. Hell yeah, it does. Again, my stupid expectations of this movie, especially even by some of the comments Christopher Plummer has made over the years, made me think this is going to be a treacly, soft, type of make me feel good movie. And these last 40 minutes are, to me, what elevates the film out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Into something much, much more darker and a commentary on our world.
And we hear footsteps, and the Nazis show up, and they're searching, and we're hiding behind these gravestones at the back. And it goes on a long time with them shaking each metal gate as they go through and shining their flashlights. And you can see our characters hiding just behind these huge tombstones, and the lights are really close to them. They are just barely hidden. And they go from one to the other, to the other. And there are these great looks between Christopher Plummer and Julie Andrews. And again, I just think you could just feel they're together, in this. And then the lights start to back away.
Come on, let's try the roof.
And they start to go. And we're like, thank God, we've done it. We're going to be safe. They're going to be all right. And then we see Rolf.
Fucking Rolf, of course.
And my guess is that you didn't expect this to come, that him to be here at this moment.
Hell no.
Yeah.
But isn't it perfect Rolf to show up late? Isn't it perfect Rolf to be the straggler? Because he's not that smart of a guy. So, of course, the son of a bitch shows up late after they've eluded everybody, and his stupidity for once can actually help him. And it's perfect, though, for the movie, right? Because you have to close the loop on this relationship. You have to close the loop on Rolf. It's great writing to have him come in because the one person, so it's great.
And Liesel gasps. And I would say it's just loud enough that that Rolf could hear it, but just quiet enough that you hope that he didn't. Yeah. And Rolf kind of starts to walk away. And again, we're going, oh, maybe he didn't hear Liesel. But then he stops and he hides and he waits. And again, this is this thing we really don't do in movies that much anymore. Quentin Tarantino does it at like the beginning of Inglourious Bastards of like, we're extending time. We're going to slow everything down. And because we're slowing everything down, it gets much, much more tense.
Yeah.
Because he's hiding and we're like, don't come out. You don't know that Rolf's there. Please just stay hidden for a while longer.
Exactly.
But they don't stay hidden. And Georg kind of looks and he nods and they start to come out. And then Rolf comes out with his flashlight.
No, wait.
And Rolf draws his gun. Georg is kind of facing the gun and he says,
Maria, children.
And she takes care of the children and takes them out. And again, this is why I say, this is not Maria's movie anymore.
Yeah.
We're in Georg's movie, know?
No, 100%.
It's you we want, not them.
Put that down.
And Rolf, who's scared and wants to prove himself and you can see all the emotions and wants Liesel to like him and I think at some level he wanted Georg's respect a long time ago.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not another move, or I'll shoot.
You're only a boy. You don't really belong to them.
There's a lot in that line,
Yes, because he's an older man
counseling
him and, maybe, and you see this, you see movies now like All Quiet on the Western Front. You see movies that there were people in all these countries who realized what was going on and tried to stop their youth from getting involved or were young and got swept up in it and then realized later the ramifications and the horror of that. And I think that's what Georg, as a survivor of World War I, is essentially trying to say to him, like, as a young man, this isn't you. Don't do this. I know you. Your heart's not in this. It's not right what you're doing. And remember, Rolf doesn't pull the gun until the captain, Georg, runs at him. And he's running at him to try to stop Rolf from blowing the whistle and telling the other Nazis that his family is there and also to give time for his family to escape, right? And in that interaction, in that moment, the fact that Rolf reaches for his pistol just reaffirms the fact that he doesn't have the confidence to stand on his own power. He must use the weapon. He must use Nazism. He must use all these things in order to feel some power in his life. And you see that. And so the counsel that he gives him in this moment as an older man talking to a younger man, like, this is not you. This is not where you want to go. This is not the path you need to walk. Because maybe he, as a younger man, walked this path going into World War I. So he's trying to counsel the young man in a way. And I think it's really powerful. It's a different version of the Reverend Mother Maria, a different version of Maria and Liesel. This is an older man trying to counsel a younger man not to get caught up in the drumbeats of war in this way.
You know what occurs to me, it never occurred to me before, is that Maria, to some degree, was a lost person until she found the Abbey and the Reverend Mother, and they helped focus. And Rolf is a lost person. And there's this moment, because Georg says, come away with us before it's too late. He's essentially saying, you can come with us. You can join our family on some level.
You can join love or you can choose hate.
Yeah.
It's your choice. And look, Georg was lost too. Right?
Totally.
After the loss of his wife and, the situation with his kids. So Maria, in essence, helped him find himself as well.
Well, that's literally what I was going to say. Is like, what if Maria had come to the Von Trapp villa 3 months earlier And Georg was in love with her and they were married when Rolf started, when You Are 16 going on 17. And when he didn't have the scene where he said, get away from here when Rolf said Heil Hitler.
Yeah.
Like Georg might have been in a place where he could have helped Rolf.
Yep.
But he wasn't in that place when Rolf interacted with him as it is.
Yeah.
And so now he has a gun on him and says,
Not another step. I'll kill you.
You give that to me, Rolf.
and now Georg's very close. And he's doing that thing that shouldn't work in a movie, but when you can make it work, it really works, which is walking right up to that loaded weapon and just gently taking it from someone.
Well, he's a soldier,
Yep.
right? He's been through the war, so he knows who's got the stones to use a weapon and who doesn't. And so he feels confident walking up to him that he can disarm him in that moment.
And at this moment, I think, again, you go, oh, it's going to be okay. He's taking the gun away. Maybe Rolf is going to go with them. And then Georg says this line, and I know why he says it. And in a lot of ways, it's a really positive thing to say to Rolf. And Rolf is not in the place to hear it because Georg says,
you'll never be one of them.
What Georg is saying is, you're a good person deep down. I know you are. You're not going to be a Nazi. That's not who you're supposed to be. You can come with us. And what Rolf says is, the place that you looked to get status, the people you have chosen to admire, you're never going to be one of them, which is what Rolf wants.
Yeah.
Or thinks he wants.
So what you're saying is that's what Rolf hears when Georg...
What he hears. Exactly.
Yeah.
And he looks up angry and then yells,
Lieutenant! Lieutenant, they're here! They're here, Lieutenant!
and Georg runs, and they get in the caretaker's car and they drive away, and we hear the Nazis coming, and the Nazis are all running into their cars, and they pile into their cars, and they're about to start their cars, and we cut to the nuns who are with the Reverend Mother, and they say,
Reverend Mother, I have sinned.
I too, Reverend Mother.
and we hear in the background the cars trying to start,
What is this sin, my children?
and the nuns look at each other, and then they pull out the distributor caps that they removed from the Nazi cars.
Who knew these ladies were closet mechanics? That was great.
There's so many moments I was watching this and I was like, I bet John loved this.
I totally did. Just the impish look between each other because they know what they sinned. They're like, oh yeah, I've sinned too. And
Yes. It's awesome. It's a great little small moment because you love those nuns. You haven't spent that much time with them, but you love them.
Yeah.
And then we're in the Alps and we're hearing Climb Every Mountain as the Von Trapp family climbs up to the ridge. And we're in this beautiful helicopter shot as we see them crossing into Switzerland as the camera goes up and up as they walk along. And we hear Climb Every Mountain climaxing as we reach the end of The Sound of Music.
Steve, did they climb into Switzerland?
They did not, in fact. First of all, Salzburg is 200 miles from Switzerland. The mountains right next to Salzburg take you into Bavaria, which is actually what we're looking at. We're not looking at Switzerland. We're looking at going into Germany. And no, they just went to the train station, took a train to Italy, where Georg had dual citizenship, so that was no problem. And then they just went to the U.S.
Yeah, two things. One, I was reading some of the stuff in the behind the scenes that Maria Von Trapp, as you said earlier, was super upset about this ending because she's like, does Hollywood not know geography?
Yeah.
And Robert Wise apparently responded saying, every movie has its own geography. That was great.
Which is true.
Yeah, which is true. So the way this ends with the helicopter shot is perfect because the way it started was a helicopter shot. And we descended into these hills, and now we're moving out of these hills. And I thought this was a great way to end it. A very inspiring and sweet ending for sure. The family is all together now and going on. And by the way, both of these German versions of the Sound of Music story that was done that you alluded to in the first part, they are available on YouTube. And the second part is all of them in America. They're what they did in America. And I was watching it. I was like, this is fascinating.
I haven't watched any of it.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I watched about 10 minutes of it as a companion piece to this movie. Those two movies are interesting to watch. Just the clips that I saw on YouTube, or the parts of the movie that I saw on YouTube, because the whole movie is on YouTube. And so it's fascinating to look at that as a companion piece to Sound of Music. But this ending is just a fantastic ending. The nuns have come into play, and that abbey has come into play. The Rolf circle is closed, and Georg and Maria are now united to lead the, as you said, coming together as husband and wife, and as father and mother to lead this family. Yeah, it's great.
By the way, as I said, in my headcanon, sadly, I do not think Max survives the war.
Oh, yeah.
But the actual guy Max is based on, this clergyman named Franz Wasner, went with them on that train to Italy and went to the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Get out.
I didn't know where to bring this up, but it struck me so strongly. As I said, I listened to a commentary with Robert Wise. And at the end of the commentary, as the movie's wrapping up, he just takes the time to mention basically the entire cast and many, many members of the crew, and talks about how he's maintained friendships and relationships with all of them, including the children. He's like, and Lisa, the person who played Liesel, she's doing this thing now, and I had lunch with her last week, and this person I have phone calls with, and I love Christopher Plummer, I love Jill. And I was like, what a lovely man. He just, we go to, I know I brought it up over and over again, but these are the guys, when I teach directing, it's like, be a Robert Wise, be this kind of a person.
Yeah.
It opened on March 2nd, 1965 in New York to mixed reviews.
Oh, yeah.
The New York Times called it romantic nonsense. Pauline Kael called the film the sugar-coated lie people want to eat, and that audiences have turned into emotional and aesthetic imbeciles when we hear ourselves humming the sticky, gooey, goody songs.
Jesus, Pauline. I mean, but Pauline also was an Adam Sandler fan, so I don't know if I can. No, I'm just joking.
Well, and it basically what it sounds like is all the intellectual East Coast and West Coast papers did not treat it well. Right. And all the small-time local papers absolutely loved it. It did not open up at number one. I think it was several ones down. 4 weeks after it opened, it was the number one movie in the country. It held that movie for 30 out of the next 43 weeks. It had a total of 41 weeks at number one. It stayed in the theaters for 4.5 years.
Wow.
It is the longest theatrical run in U.S. history.
That's amazing.
4.5 years, this thing's in the movie theaters.
Good God.
A few months after opening, it was opened in 261 theaters around the world. This is the first musical, ever to have both all the dialogue and the music all dubbed into a whole bunch of different languages.
Oh, wow.
As I said, it was popular everywhere around the world except Germany and Austria, and they frequently cut the third act entirely. It was, of course, the highest grossing film of 1965. Then it became the highest grossing film of all time, breaking the record set by Gone with the Wind in 1939. And one thing I want to point out is that we have all this conversation still today about, can women carry a movie? Like how we were, and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, the first two biggest movies of all time are female leads. It's like almost half of film history was female leads were, in these movies.
Well, who pushes those narratives?
Yeah.
Always male critics or male pundits, always pushing those narratives. But women absolutely have shown they can lead films. They can be the lead in anything, and people will watch. I mean, as we're recording this, Moana right now is on track to hit $1 billion, and The Rock is barely in that movie. The Rock's only in the 10, 15 minutes of that movie. So these are these things, we just had Barbie make $1 billion last year. So it's just nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Yeah.
The soundtrack, of course, is also one of the most successful soundtracks of all time. It received 10 Oscar nominations, including Samantha Eggar for The Collector, the movie that William Wyler went off to make when he didn't do The Sound of Music.
Oh, how funny.
Elizabeth Hartman was nominated for Patch of Blue, Simone Signoret for Ship of Fools, and Julie Christie won for Darling, which I've never seen.
Okay.
Peggy Wood was nominated for Supporting Actress, and she lost to Shelley Winters, who won for Patch of Blue. It was nominated for Art Direction, Cinematography, and Costume Design, and this is when there were awards given for both color and black and white, so these were the color ones. It did not win because this is the year of Dr. Zhivago.
Oh, man.
So Dr. Zhivago won a bunch of that stuff, but this movie did win for editing, adapted score, sound, picture, and director for Robert Wise. Salzberg, not a fan of this movie when it came out. Didn't like it at all. Today, they are big fans because over 300,000 people travel every year to Salzburg to take the Sound of Music tours. And they get way more tourist traffic for the Sound of Music than they do for Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was born there.
Like always.
Yeah.
Money talks. Money talks.
As I mentioned at the beginning, I've been to them. There are now sing-along Sound of Musics as a tradition all over the world all the time. And of course, as I mentioned, the Von Trapps moved to the U.S. where they tour and ran a place in Vermont. And there still are Von Trapps out singing and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, they still own the place in Vermont.
Yep.
So, and Von Trapp family members work the place in Vermont. So I might actually I've never been to Vermont. It kind of would be fun to go
beautiful.
For that reason. Yeah. Yeah.
So here are my final thoughts on this movie.
Okay.
I'll go first because this is your first time seeing it. I want you to have, I've had decades to contemplate it. You haven't had so much time.
Okay.
To me, we never talk about Robert Wise as one of the great directors. He's never on the list.
I know, man.
And if you look at this movie and West Side Story, even though they're similar, like we talked about the opening being similar, they're both big musicals. I think they're really, really different in terms of tone. And I think what it shows is Robert Wise was just a master craftsman. That's the first thing. I think this is just a really good movie. It's beautifully shot. Almost every shot is great. The performances are great. The way he stages the musical numbers is great. And when they dealt with the big thing that everybody was worried about whether or not this was too sweet, all the actors were worried. Robert Wise was worried. And it was even a reason that you were reluctant to watch the film.
100%.
That is what they solved, is they found a way. It's not that, Lonely Goat Herd and Favorite Things aren't sweet. There still are. They're very, very sweet moments, but they managed to balance that with a lot of humanity and stuff that really, really genuinely moves me. And I absolutely love Kurt. I will talk about all the actors I love and then the actor that I absolutely, totally adore. Peggy Wood as the Reverend Mother is absolutely incredible, dignified, wise, powerful, incredibly strong character. The Baroness is off the charts, complicated, both, manipulative and witty and urbane, and with real feeling that you get in the end. Max lights up every scene he's in. The kids are all fantastic, particularly Liesel and Brigitte, who I think steal a lot of scenes. Christopher Plummer, just love him everywhere. And all of the stuff he's playing, he can be very scary, very intense, very funny, and incredibly romantic in those romantic scenes.
Yeah.
But man, Julie Andrews is stunning. Absolutely. The charisma that comes on her in confidence, the joy, the fear, the love, all of the layers, and then the incredible strength. Even though her character is moved somewhat to the background in the final act of the film, the incredible strength and dignity and maturity she shows. It is a masterclass top to bottom. And again, I'll never say anything bad about Mary Poppins. I love Mary Poppins, but I think this is head and shoulders above it in terms of her performance. I think it's absolutely astounding. And I love the Sound of Music, and I will be watching it again. And maybe I'll even go to the sing-along Sound of Music again sometime in my future. Maybe I'll even bring the Outlaw along. Who knows?
Okay, so my final thoughts are, every once in a while, and it's a great thing to experience, you're wrong about a movie. And it is a joy to be wrong. Nowadays, everybody wants to go after people. Oh, you're backtracking, or, oh, you changed your mind about this, or you said one thing and now look how wrong you are. There is a joy in being wrong. There is a joy in having an expectation of something or having expectations about something, and then you see it or experience it or you do it or you visit it or you eat it or you watch it, and all of a sudden you're like, well, why the hell did I ever resist this for so long? And that's happened a couple of times on the show, and I love when it happens because that means that there's something new still to discover in the world. There's something new that you can learn from. There's something new that you can have a great experience with. And The Sound of Music was that. I can't tell you how absolutely blown away I was by this experience because I completely thought I was going to be bored. It was going to be too much. And it was going to be just so cheesy. And you guys know I sometimes will push against cheesy, soft stuff, but this one doesn't. It tells a really strong story about what's going on with Maria, her rebellious nature. She's not evil in her rebellion. It's a rebellion because she doesn't know where she belongs. She's trying to figure out where it is. This option opens to her, and then we explore all of this. As Steve so well said, it's 3 different movies. And each one of those movies builds upon the movie from before and expands upon it even more to give you an appreciation for these characters. It zigs where you think it's going to zag, and all the great movies do that. And it gives you some really sweet, heartbreaking, and tender moments as well that make you care for these characters and love these characters. And then just when everything is set up to possibly give you a happy ending, it has the guts to go into the darker areas of the story and show you what they experienced, and take the guts to move the focus from Julie Andrews over to Christopher Plummer, what Georg is going through as his love for his country is now in essence challenged because of what's going on in Austria. So now we get to experience a whole new level of Georg and go through his journey as he's making the decision to leave the country that he loves so much to go be with his family. So the way they capture all of it, leading to a very sweet ending, I thought was fantastic. The cinematography here is stunning. The direction from Robert Wise is so confident and correct. The tones work, even though they change as the film goes along. It all works so well and cohesively. Costume designs are great. And the performances from all the children, even Gretel as the young child, it all works. You buy into it all and you care about these children. And Julie Andrews, and Christopher Plummer, excellent. The Reverend Mother, excellent, all of that. But it's Julie Andrews' power and charisma and emotional journey that she goes on that anchors the film and makes you care about the movie. So that by the end, you are so happy to see that they both survived it and all the kids survived it. And they're even stronger as a family as they go into this new life. And so to me, the film just absolutely blew me away. I thoroughly enjoyed it, thoroughly loved it, put more than one smile on my face, consistently had me singing some of the songs that I'd already heard before in different arenas. And then by the end, it gave me a whole new appreciation for Robert Wise, as you said, Steve, who is a master filmmaker, in my opinion, that does not get the respect he deserves. And a filmmaker who has been successful in multiple genres of movies. And by the way, had 2 movies out the same year with The Sound of Music and The Sand Pebbles, who are both very well received movies for their different genres of movies. So to me, just an absolutely great experience. And I'm so glad I went on this 3-part journey with you and with the fans who have been commenting on the first part already, because we're just recording the 3rd part without having released the 2nd part, and seeing the joy of their revisiting of this movie has been a blast as well. So those are my final thoughts on this film.
And I will say, and I know you know this feeling, and I'm sure many of the people listening do, when you're recommending a movie to a friend, it's always stressful, and you always go, God, I hope he likes the thing. And it's even worse when you know, because if he doesn't like it, I'm going to have to spend 3, 4, 5 hours talking about it with John, and it's not going to be that much fun. So I'm really thrilled that you liked it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I hope you've enjoyed this journey through The Sound of Music. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for The Cine-Files, Cine_Files on Twitter, The Cine-Files Podcast on Instagram. We're probably coming to Blue Sky at some point, and maybe a whole bunch of other places, because, who doesn't need more social media in their life? And if you haven't subscribed to the show, we would love if you do it at whatever your platform you prefer, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcast or YouTube or dozens of other podcast platforms. Subscribe there. If you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it would be greatly appreciated. As we mentioned before, you could support the show through patreon.com/The Cine-Files or Apple Podcasts. You can buy or stream The Sound of Music along with every other movie we've ever reviewed on cinephiles.net. And I am SR Morris on Twitter and SR Morris on Blue Sky, as well as SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how would people find you?
You can always find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says, and my other podcast that I do, Having Fun with the Boys over there on the Geek Buddies, and with my crazy friend, Jeff Snyder on the Hot Mic. Those are all separate podcast feeds that you all can subscribe to, as well as subscribing to this one.
And now, since Christmas season is coming up, we've decided to take a little bit of a different approach to a holiday classic, and that is to explore the TV shows we all grew up with, the incredible stop-motion animation of Rankin and Bass. So we will be looking into those Rankin and Bass classics like Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town and The Year Without a Santa Claus, and talking about some of the other ones as well. That will be next week, or actually, no, I think we're going to be releasing that on Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
Right here on the Cine-Files.